Jozsef. Born November 30, 1843 in Moricz, died December 31, 1921 in Budapest. Poet, editor. Father a shopkeeper. Family moved to Zsigmond in 1846 and to Cirque in 1850. Pursued Judaic studies at Miskolc, Ksorna, and Janashiza, but did not want to become rabbi. Left home for Vienna when 13. Entered Protestant gymnasium in Ramazombat in 1858 and continued studies at Reformatus Collegium in Debrecen in 1861. On death of father in 1862 he left school to earn living as itinerant teacher for 5 years. Moved to Pest in 1867 in hope of publishing poems. Became proofreader with Deutsche Publishing House. Published Żydo Dalok in 1868 at own expense. Undertook editorship of Kepsvilag in 1873, which failed. Married daughter of poor relative in 1873. Position as reporter for Nemzeti Hírlap improved circumstances. Lived in Temesvar 1876 to 1882 as secretary of Jewish religious community. Became member of Petofi Tarsasig in 1877, honorary member in 1897. Returned to Budapest in 1882 and served as official of Hungarian French Insurance Society 1882 to 1889. Founded a het in 1890, which became influential voice of new literature in Hungary. Member of Kisfaludy Tarsasig in 1914. Forced by financial problems to surrender a het to another editor and publisher in 1919. One of the most distinguished representatives of Hungarian lyric poetry at end of 19th century. Especially noted for ballads. Subjects came from emotional life of Jews and Hungarians, and language was extension of tradition of János Arany, QV. Experimentations showed strong Art Nouveau tendencies. Virtuosity in rhyme patterns and creation of distinctive quantitative meters make him precursor of versification of 20th century Nyugat school. Editions of his poems and Mise Verich Prahl are available in German, and some of his poems have been translated into Bulgarian, English, French, Hebrew, Italian, Japanese, Polish, Romanian, Russian, Slovakian, and Swedish. Catalanya János. Born March 13, 1899 in Telki, died August 10, 1969 in Budapest. Novelist, short story writer, dramatist, sociographic writer. Father was forestry councillor. Attended gymnasium in Pécs and Székesfehérvár. Opposed family's middle-class views and left home for Budapest in 1922. Led very difficult life in pursuit of ideals and literary career for many years. Member of Communist Writers Group 1922 to 1923. Staff member of many periodicals, sometimes as chief editor. Secretary of Irakas de Sajai Sulit 1932 to 1944, then its general secretary. Made study tours of Finland in 1936, 1937, and 1938. Became co-president of Janis Pannonius Tarsasig in 1941, and chief editor of Tazantol in Debrecen in same year. Spent time in concentration camp for support of workers and strong nationalism. Silent for time after 1946. His prose fiction often draws on autobiographical materials. Populist author seeking reform in imaginative and sociographic writings. Socialistic but highly independent. Has recently turned to Hungarian past as subject for historical novels, in which he seeks to discover lasting characteristics of Hungarian people. Julianus Barat has been translated into Italian, and some of his short stories into English, French, German, Italian, and Serbian. Kalksiferank. Born August 8, 1790 in Zodmeter, Transylvania, died August 24, 1838 in Czeke. Poet, critic, editor. Descendant of landed gentry. Lost sight in left eye at early age from smallpox. Entered Debreceni Reformatus Collegium in 1796, where he studied for 13 years. Learned Latin and French, then German and Greek while young. Especially interested in writings of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, Sándor Kisfaludy, Benedict Vorag, Ferenc Kazinczy, QQV, Bell, Fontenelle, Voltaire, Holbach, Kant, and Goethe. Attended Csikszentmihalyi's funeral, in 1805. Supported Kazinczy's cultural, language, and literary reforms from first letter to him on May 19, 1808 to 1817, the period of their correspondence. Completed law studies at Debrecen in 1809. Went to Pest in 1810 to continue study of law, but interest in literature increased. Returned to Debrecen in 1810. Spent most of 1811 in Zodmeter beginning life of author. Settled on family estate in Atmost in 1812 to practice farming. Depressed by such activity and isolation. Wanted to move to Pest, but lack of money limited him to visits, 1813, 1817, 1826, 1832, 1835. For a number of years beginning in 1826 he edited Elit es Literatura with Palsamir, with whom he wrote Philalet, a reply to Mondolate, in the controversy over the reform of the Hungarian language. Became member of circle around Károly Kisfaludy, QV. Participated in first session of Academy. Need to take care of brother's widow and children ended possibility of his moving to Pest. Achieved reputation as orator in meetings of Parliament 1833 to 1836, in which he participated until first part of 1835, when he was barred from delegation, to the regret of Lajos Kossuth and youth of the day. In last years he read literature dealing with political science and law and writings of Byron, Scott, Bulwer, and Hugo. Died after weeks illness stemming from severe cold. Poetry expresses despondency and longing to escape self and immediate reality, the romantic Sichflein. Poems deal with love, patriotism, and philosophical thoughts. His ballads broke new ground in Hungarian poetry. Prose writings and parliamentary speeches express his ethical concept of love of country. He who actively loves his country fulfills human obligation on earth. Form and substance of prose influenced by Latin writers, especially Cicero and Plutarch. Opened new period in Hungarian literary criticism when he sought to separate responsibly the good from the bad literature being written in the period. Equipped well for task by natural taste and by knowledge of aesthetics derived from comprehensive study of theory and practice. Some of his poems have been translated into Bulgarian, English, French, German, Hebrew, Italian, Japanese, Russian, and Swedish. Colas very Grand Pierre Emile. Born January 15, 1907 in Kolosvar. Novelist, short story writer, critic, translator, editor. Father a civil servant. Completed schooling in Kolosvar and Paris. Began studies at University of Budapest and completed them at University of Pécs. Worked in Statistikai Hivatal, at Franklin Tarsalat, and then at radio. Writings appeared in Nyugat and Protestants Zemel. Contributed regularly to Magyar Szalag. Captured by Russians during World War II. On return to Budapest he became director of Radio Irodalmai Osztaly and later administered Radio S programs. Edited Magyaric 1947 to 1949. Served as reader for various book publishers 1949 to 1951. Since 1951 he has devoted time entirely to writing. Important writer of prose fiction in so-called third generation of Nugget school. Novels and short stories deal critically and satirically with lives of middle class and official society. Much psychological analysis of characters. Komjathi Gino. Born February 2, 1858 in Székely, died January 26, 1895 in Budapest. Poet. Father a civil servant in Nógrád County. Attended several public schools. Studied with philosophy faculty at University of Budapest but became a teacher in higher elementary school in Balasagyarmat in 1880 before graduation. Married Gisela Marcus in 1882. Taught in Zénik from 1885 until his death. Period of creativity 1888 to 1894, in isolation from intellectual and social life. His only collection of poems appeared shortly before death. Important representative of end of 19th century experimentations in Hungarian lyric poetry. Found reality worthless and sought to melt into life ocean. His poems, mostly philosophical in character, show influence of Schopenhauer, Spinoza, and Nietzsche, views moved from pessimism to pantheism to doctrine of Übermensch. Love poems to wife are generally considered best. Some of his poems have been translated into English, French, German, Italian, Japanese, and Swedish. Castellani Deso. Born March 29, 1885 in Szabadka, died November 3, 1936 in Budapest. A poet, critic, translator, and a journalist, also a writer of prose fiction. Between 1895 and 1903 he studied at the gymnasium in Szabadka, which was directed by his father. Attended the University of Budapest 1903 to 1906, where he specialized in Hungarian and German and formed close friendship with Mihaly Babits and Gyula Juhász, QQV. Began career in poetry about 1903, and his poems appeared in Baksky Hurlap 1903 to 1905, Zsd Videk 1904 to 1905, and Magyar Zémol 1906. Became staff member of Budapesti Napló in 1906. Increased his knowledge of foreign languages. Contributed to Nugget from its founding in 1908, Elit 1910 to 1914, Nepsava 1907 to 1908, Ahet 1906 to 1916, and UJI Doc 1907 to 1916, major contributor to Vilag 1910 to 1919. Married Ilona Harmas in 1913. Troubled by events of World War I became member of Vörösmarty Academy. Joined staff of UJ Nemzetek for short time after failure of revolutionary government. Joined editorial staff of Pesti Hurlap in 1929. Recognition of his literary works increased at home and abroad. Elected to numerous societies and gained respect of Thomas Mann. Attacked poetry of Endre Ady, QV, in 1929. Became member of Kisfaludy Tarsasig in 1930 and first president of Hungarian Pen Club in 1931. Sought to increase knowledge of Hungarian intellectual life abroad, visited Holland and England, where he received Font 1000 from Lord Rothermere for Pen Club, which was awarded to Gyula Krudi and Zsigmond Moricz, QQV. Growth in mouth was first sign of fatal cancer. Underwent numerous painful operations and received radium treatments in Stockholm. Cancer worsened, finally became unable to talk. Died after severe physical and spiritual agony. Important representative of art for art's sake school, but wide-ranging writings and translations show relationship with reality. Poems have impressionistic and symbolist characteristics, some those of decadent poetry. Used great variety of verse forms. Style of poems, novels, and short stories became more economical and direct after World War I. Used free verse in second half of career. Novels contain strong psychological analysis, and his short stories are often considered to be among the best in Hungarian literature. His critical studies shed considerable light on literature of his day. Basically non-political in attitudes. Translated literary works from many languages, and translations belong among best of his generation. Araz Orvos has been translated into German, Nero, Averas Kolto into Croatian, Dutch, English, French, German, Italian, Polish, and Slovakian, Eads Anna into Czech, Dutch, English, French, Italian, and Polish, Paxerta into Croatian, Czech, German, and Italian, and some of his poems and short stories into Bulgarian, English, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Polish, Portuguese, Romanian, Russian, Serbian, and Slovakian. Kriti Gyola. Born October 21, 1878 in Nyíregyháza, died May 12, 1933 in Budapest. Novelist, short story writer, journalist. Father a well-to-do lawyer. Completed schooling in Szatmárnémeti, Nyíregyháza, and Podolin, where he spent 1 year. First work appeared in Szabadságtó, Nyíregyháza, when 14, became an editorial staff member of Debreceni Elena in 1895. Went to Nagyvárad and then to Budapest in 1896, seldom left the capital for any great length of time thereafter. Without help from home he lived in poor economic circumstances. Became intimately acquainted with nightlife and poor. Married twice, first in 1899. Began to publish extensively and successfully. Led colorful and expensive life in best hotels and coffee houses. Never formed close friendships, held himself apart from all literary cliques, and seldom received recognition for writings. Became member of Petofi Tarsasig in 1914. Fortunes declined after World War I. Works lost popularity, and he had difficulties finding publishers. Health deteriorated rapidly about 1925, suffered a stroke in summer 1928. Awarded Baumgarten Prize in 1930, but forced by financial problems to give up home on Margitsaget and move to Óbuda. Frequently hospitalized. Practically disappeared from literary scene, editors cancelled all contracts in 1931. Award of Lord Rothermere Prize in 1932 was insufficient to relieve difficulties. Wrote some of his most enduring works during this period of hardship and neglect. Works attracted attention of young writers around 1940. One of the most important figures in 20th century Hungarian prose fiction. Extremely prolific, and many writings which appeared in periodicals are not yet published in book form. Literary characteristics set him apart from other literature of the period. Short stories and novels show various styles in stages of his development: Romanticism, Impressionism, Symbolism, and Realism. Influenced by Morjokai, Kalman Mixith, and Gyola Ravitsky, QQV, and by Dickens, Maupassant, Zola, and Turgenev. Recollections of early life and experiences in Budapest form basic materials of his writings. His special quality lies in evocation of moods and sentiment, creating dream world through which reality is viewed. A Podoliniki Certet has been translated into Slovakian, and some of his short works into French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, Serbian, and Swedish. Laxko Geza. Born December 3, 1884 in Budapest, died December 1, 1953 in Budapest. Novelist, short story writer, editor. Illegitimate child of an actress. Spent childhood and youth in atmosphere of theater. Received teaching certificate from Jewish Collegium, in Budapest, where he developed interests in fine arts and became especially enamored of French culture. Visited Paris. Became teacher in women's gymnasium in 1907 and contributor to Nugget in 1908. Named director of high school and appointed professor at University of Budapest in 1919. Supported revolution and lost both positions when government failed. Wrote numerous introductions to editions in Athenaeum series, edited works for other series, Pankonavtar, Pesti Naplo Konavek, and Fillers Klassikus Regionike. Associate editor of Pesti Naplo 1923 to 1939. Also editor with AZ Est Publications. Became literary editor of Dante Publishers in 1940 and helped to edit Weekly Zivarvani beginning in 1946. Spent remainder of life in retirement at work on his Rakocza novels. Eminent writer of fiction and learned stylist of first generation of Nugget school. Themes in novels from Hungarian past and his own youth. His historical novels generally considered to be the most important. Much influenced by French literature, especially Flaubert and Maupassant. His short stories treat intellectual and psychological problems and are characterized by sensitivity and elegant style. Wrote studies of linguistics and style and is noted for translations and studies of Molière, Balzac, Daudet, Anatole France, Maupassant, Renan, Roland, and Moricz. A few of his short stories have been translated into French and German. Jozsef. Born August 4, 1896, in Markali. Novelist, short story writer, poet. Descendant of middle-class family. Completed gymnasium studies in Budapest and studies in philosophy at universities of Budapest and Vienna. His poems first appeared in a Tate in 1915, later in Ma. Formed connection with Ervin Szabó's anti-militaristic movement in early years of World War I, was among first members of Communist Party in Hungary. Helped to edit Vörös Ujjság and Ifjúgarda. Arrested at end of February 1919. Carried on many newspaper and party activities. Emigrated to Vienna in August 1919, where he lived for months in barracks in Grinzing. Served on board of Iraq Konivtara series, which published writings of emigrant authors, including those of Lajos Kásik, QV, and Bela Balázs, QV. Moved to Berlin at beginning of 1927. Worked as journalist and articles appeared in Rotfani and Welt am Abend. Also dramaturge for Prometheus Film Studio and editor of Film UNDVOK. Emigrated to Moscow in 1930. Editorial staff member of Sarlo es Kalapax. Arrested as supporter of Belikon in February 1938. Interrogated continually in prison for 3 years and exiled to Norilsk region in Siberia at outbreak of World War II. Later freed from work camp and exiled to Deleb, Siberia. Again freed in 1953. Rehabilitated in 1955 and returned to Hungary. Numerous works have been published since then. In recent years he has been a publicist in Hungarian literary life. Awarded Attila Jozsef Prize for Visegrady Utka and Kulcs in 1957, Central Council of Hungarian Trade Unions Prize for Life Work and Visegrady Utka in 1958, and Kossuth Prize for Ijzo in 1963. His early writings were influenced by avant-gardism through Kásik. Novels and short stories, more important than poems, express revolutionary themes and social reforms in realistic style. Especially concerned with workers' movement. Oldas es Kotes, a short story, was produced as a film in 1962. Madic Imre. Born January 21, 1823 in Alsace-Trigova, died October 5, 1864 in Alsace-Trigova. Poet, dramatist. Descendant of ancient aristocratic family. Completed first forms of study at home, remainder in Paris Gymnasium in Vac. Wrote and edited Literaturwerkwerks with younger brother for circulation in family when 15. Entered University of Pest in 1837. After completing course with philosophy faculty, he studied law, and became deputy clerk to subprefect of Novgorod County in 1843. Appointed clerk, later High Commissioner. His great period of literary creativity was 1843 to 1845. Marriage to Erzsébet Frater in 1845 was unhappy, divorced in 1854. Lived on estate in Jozsef. Depression over wife's behavior caused illness in 1848 and he did not recover until after revolution. Imprisoned in summer 1852 for helping János Rákóczi, Kossuth secretary, to escape, released in Pest in May 1853. Restricted to Pest on release, did not return to Jozsef till fall 1853. Began work on Az Ember Tragédia in 1859. Parliamentary representative of Balasage Yarmut district in March 1861. In 1861 he showed manuscript of Az Ember Tragédia to János Arany, QV, who praised it and recommended some stylistic and metrical revisions. Became member of Kisfaludy Tarsasig in 1862, shortly after publication of Az Ember Tragédia, member of Academy in 1863. Died of heart trouble, from which he had long suffered. Wrote many lyric poems, articles, and dramas, but only truly lasting work is Az Ember Tragédia, a dramatic poem, which became greatest achievement of Hungarian dramatic literature and placed him on level of West European philosophical dramatists. It represents effort on his part to explore the conflict between individualism and collectivism, the survival of individuality in face of reality, through visions of future given to Adam by Lucifer in which Eve is participating character. Resolution of conflict described as that of tragic idealist. Az Ember Tragédia is available in Bulgarian, Czech, Dutch, English, Finnish, French, German, Hebrew, Italian, Japanese, Romanian, Russian, Serbian, Slovakian, Slovenian, Turkish, and Yiddish, and some of his poems have been translated in Bulgarian and German. Makai Sandor. Born May 13, 1890 in Nagyened, died July 19, 1951 in Budapest. Novelist, religious and educational writer, critic. Completed schooling in Enid, Kolozsvár, and Szepes-Györgyi. Studied theology with Kolozsvár Reformed Church Theological Faculty and at the same time pursued studies at University of Kolozsvár. Obtained doctorate in philosophy in 1912. Served as minister in Vajdakomaras 1915 to 1917. Professor of Theology in Saraspatak 1917 to 1918 and in Kolozsvár 1918 to 1926. Edited Azut 1915 to 1921 and Reformatus Zemel, Kolozsvár, 1921 to 1925 and again beginning in 1940. Chosen bishop in 1926 and served Transylvania district until 1936. Became professor at Debreceni Reformatus Collegium in 1936 and then professor at Theological Academy. Member of Erdei Muzeumi Gilit, Erdei Irodal Tarsasig, and Kameni Zsigmond Irodal Tarsasig, in Marasvásárhely. In addition to a large number of theological, philosophical, and educational studies and sermons, he contributed novels to the period. Represented conservative tradition but was quite modern in outlook. Sought to suggest solutions to contemporary problems in historical novels dealing with past. Defense of Andrade, QV, on religious and patriotic grounds in Magyar Faszország created great controversy. Some of his short stories have been translated into French, German, and Turkish. Moricz Sándor. Born April 11, 1900, in Kassa. Novelist, short story writer, journalist. Family name, Grossschmidt. Father a lawyer, family of Saxon origin. Completed schooling in Kassa, Eperjes, and Budapest. Articles under pseudonyms began to appear while in gymnasium. Studied law at University of Budapest. As student participated in revolutionary events of 1918 to 1919. Left Hungary in 1919 and lived in Germany until 1923, studying journalism at University of Leipzig and philosophy at Universities of Frankfurt am Main and Berlin. Continued study of philosophy in Paris 1923 to 1928. Became staff member of TUS, in Vienna. On return to Budapest followed journalistic career, serving on staffs of Újság and Pesti Hírlap. During 1930s contributed to many West European periodicals. Became best-selling author. Viewed problems of 1930s humanistically and opposed fascism. Calend presented by Nemzeti Kamerazínház in 1940 for nearly a year, and a Kasai Polgaric Premii read by National Theatre in 1942. After 1945 he was staff member of Magyar Nemzet. Emigrated to Switzerland in 1948 and moved to Italy in 1950. Settled in United States in 1952 and became citizen in 1957. Most important and influential representative of middle-class literature in period between two world wars, especially in his novels. Not a reformer but a portrayer of human problems and struggles through psychological examination. Probes innermost parts of human nature. Lyrical and intuitive delineation of characters results in relatively plotless novels. Style symbolic, not realistic. Often praised for ability to rise above narrow nationalism and provincialism. Zengelok has been translated into French, Ksutura into Czech and German, Ijan Emberek into Czech, Dutch, and German, a Zajanik Iskolaja, a Gyertyeksan Kiginek, Kasai Polgaric, a Sarali, and Calend into German, Valas Budden into Czech, German, and Spanish, Feltikanik into Dutch, German, and Turkish, Vendi Jacek Balzanoban into Czech, Dutch, German, Italian, Spanish, and Swedish, and some of his short stories into Bulgarian, Czech, French, German, Italian, Polish, Russian, Slovakian, and Turkish. Mecs Laszlo. Born January 17, 1895 in Hernádzsintistvan. Poet. Father a school teacher. After completing studies at Premonstratensian Gymnasium in Kassa studied philosophy and theology at Pázmány University in Budapest. Poems first appeared in 1915 in Elit. Entered Premonstratensian order in 1918 and became teacher in Order's Gymnasium in Kassa. After Czech government took over schools he became priest in Nagykapos in 1920 and in Kirill-Helmek in 1929. Fame spread quickly on publication of Hagyonali Harangzó in 1923. Became member of Petofi Társaság, Kisfa Iudi Társaság, Janus Pannonius Társaság, and Szent István Academia. Acclaimed during visits and lectures in Paris, Lille, and Holland in 1938. Chief editor of Vigilia 1941–1942. Wrote anti-Hitler poem in 1942 issue of Vigilia. After 1945 lived in Pannonhalma withdrawn from literary life. Imprisoned in 1953 and released in September 1956. Served as chaplain in Budapest. Has lived in Pannonhalma since 1961. Important voice of Catholicism in imaginative literature, whose ideals and optimism he seeks to sustain. Poems romantic. Uses everyday subjects. Advocates ideals of Christian socialism. Style often highly technical. Religious poems generally considered to be best. Became leader of Hungarian writers in Czechoslovakia for a time. An edition of his poems is available in French, and some of his poems have been translated into Dutch, English, German, Italian, Romanian, and Slovakian. Mike's Kellerman. Born August 1690 in Zagan, died October 2, 1761 in Rodesto, Turkey. Prose writer, translator. Descendant of ancient aristocratic family. Entered Jesuit college in Kolosvar in 1700. In 1707 joined service of Prince Ferenc Rákóczi, QV, as personal aide. Accompanied Rákóczi to Poland in 1711 and through Danzig to France. Lived in France, January 13, 1713 to September 15, 1717, where he became acquainted with French culture and literature, and lived afterwards in Rodesto with exiles. Banishment made him a writer. Participated in expedition of Jozsef Rákóczi to Transylvania in 1738. Requested pardon from Maria Theresa in 1741, after death of Ferenc Rákóczi, but it was denied, ex tertia nulla redemptio. Died of plague. Historikers Levelek, published in 1794, is a landmark in the history of Hungarian literary prose, characterized by unaffected expressions of views, emotions, and persons and by personal interpretive style. He also prepared many translations, Fleury, Benoit van Heeften, Poget, Antoine de Cordon, Calmet, Gobinet, Melik, Le Tourneuse, Madame de Gomez. An edition of Torikers Levelek is available in Turkish, and some of its parts in French, Italian, and Polish. Mixeth Kalman. Born January 16, 1847 in Sclabonia, died May 28, 1910 in Budapest. Novelist, short story writer, publicist. Father a smallholder, tavern keeper, and butcher. Attended Evangelical and Reformed Gymnasium in Ramazombat 1857-1862 and Evangelical Gymnasium in Selma Obanya 1863-1866. Studied law at University of Pest 1866-1869 but never took examination. Became counselor to sheriff in Balasage Yarmouth in 1870. Resigned in 1871 to become apprentice lawyer and also staff member of Nagrady Lepak. Awarded prize by Igazmandu in Pest for Ami Alelkit Megmerjze, a short story, in 1871. Returned to family village to try farming. Increased interest in writing and journalistic career. Married Ilona Mox in summer 1873 in Pest, contrary to her family's wish. Became editor of Magyarnplap in 1874. Sent wife to her parents' home in 1875 because of financial problems, divorced her in 1876, and remarried her on December 31, 1882, when career was established. Very happy marriage. Joined staff of Budapestina Pilap in 1877. Wrote articles on all major questions of day. Near end of July 1878 moved to Zig to become regular staff member of Zsigmond Napló. Returned to Budapest in December 1880. Joined staff of Országvilág and, in 1881, Pesti Hírlap, with which he was associated for nearly 20 years. Publication of Tatatyafiak, 1881, and a Joe Palakak, 1882, brought him fame. Became member of Petofi Tarsasig in 1881, Kisfaluti Tarsasig in 1882. Edited Magyarország Esnajivilag 1882-1883 and Urambatyam in 1886, both of which failed. Very successful contributions to Vasarnapi Ujjayszag, Magyar Szalon, Kepsk Szaladilapak, among other periodicals, and to two publishers' series of novels, Egyetms Regenitor and Regini Ujjayszag, brought him fame approaching that of Morjokai, QV. Was parliamentary representative from Ilifalva district 1887 to 1889 and Fogaras district 1892 to end of life. Associate member of Academy in 1889. President of Budapesti Ujjayszagaraky Solt in 1896. Founded Országos Hírlap in 1896, which failed after year. Left Pesti Hírlap in 1903 to become principal contributor to Az Ujjayszag, Voice of István Tisza. Spent majority of time on estate in Horpax, which he purchased from Palzontic in 1905. Awarded Grand Prize by Academy in 1908. Had suffered seizures of laryngitis and asthma since 1887. Serious case of pneumonia in 1909. Died suddenly within 2 weeks after national celebration of 40th anniversary of his literary career, which included his receipt of Order of St. Stephen from Francis Joseph I, distinguished membership in Academy, and honorary doctorate in philosophy from University of Budapest. One of the most important figures in Hungarian prose fiction. His novels and stories treat the life of peasants, people in small towns, landed gentry, and proprietor class in provinces of upper northern Hungary, also autobiographical elements. Not really a social critic but humorist portraying individuals satirically and ironically in their Hungarian settings. Especially effective in his use of anecdotal method. The movement of the style in his novels between Romanticism and realism opened a new period in the history of Hungarian novel. According to many critics, he established naturalness of conversation mixed with tasteful humor in Hungarian literature. Children's stories are classics. Many of his novels have been translated into Bulgarian, Chinese, Croatian, Czech, Danish, Dutch, English, Estonian, Finnish, French, German, Italian, Lithuanian, Polish, Romanian, Russian, Serbian, Slovakian, Spanish, Swedish, Turkish, and Ukrainian, and editions of his selected works are available in German and Russian. Molnar Ferenc. Born January 12, 1878 in Budapest, died April 2, 1952 in New York. Dramatist, novelist, short story writer, journalist. Completed schooling at Reformed Gymnasium in Budapest. Began study of law at University of Budapest, pursued international aspects at University of Geneva briefly, abandoned law as a career. Joined editorial staff of Budapesti Napló in 1896. Articles and short stories gained wide recognition while he was a youth. Worked on staffs of Ahet, UJI and Pesti Hírlap. Soon became professional dramatist and novelist. Named member of Petofi Tarsasig in 1908. Married 3 times, Margit Vezir, Sari Fadake, and Lily Darvas, an actress living in the United States. War correspondent during World War I, his reports were published by New York Times even though he was on opposing side. His real development as a writer lay in drama, and success after World War I became worldwide. Spent increasing amounts of time abroad in 1920s and left Hungary in 1930s because of growing threat of fascism. Went to France and Switzerland and in 1940 settled in New York, after which he made occasional trips to Europe. Lived and worked in Plaza Hotel at literary activities until his death. His novels, especially A Palutkafjuk and Ender, are significant expressions of life of his times, but his dramas established real reputation, making him best known Hungarian writer abroad. Early writings much influenced by Oscar Wilde, Maupassant, and modern French comedy. Showed originality in treatment of absurd situations in society. Characters usually violate conventions of society and have difficulty finding reasonable solutions to rational problems. Mixed romanticism and realism in his plays. Tended to be sentimental and cynical. Strong sense of dramatic structure. Introduced many innovations to Hungarian stage. Translated numerous works in early years of career. Lilium very successful both as play and as Carousel, a musical comedy. Many plays produced as films. Many of his plays have been translated into Bulgarian, Dutch, English, Estonian, Finnish, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Polish, Romanian, Russian, Serbian, Slovakian, Slovenian, Spanish, Swedish, and Turkish, and a pal utkafik into Bulgarian, English, Finnish, German, Italian, Polish, Romanian, Serbian, Slovakian, Slovenian, Spanish, and Turkish, and some of his short stories are available in periodicals and anthologies in several foreign languages. Moricz. Born July 17, 1879 in Kiskunfeliji, died February 8, 1934 in Zsigmond. Novelist, short story writer, journalist. Father a furrier and farmer. Completed studies at Gymnasium in Feleji. Writings first appeared in Feleji Hazihurlap while a student. Entered University of Budapest in 1897 to become teacher of geography and natural science. Obtained teaching degree in 1901 and accepted position in Felszalavo. Sought new position and arrived in Zsigmond in May 1902. Abandoned teaching career and became journalist with Zsigmond Napló, for which he edited Kossuth section and wrote lead articles and reports on most important events. Married Ilona Walshausen. Formed friendship with István Tomorkeny, QV. Became assistant librarian of Szamajai Könyvtár, which he considered his major responsibility. Met Lajos Posa in 1905 and through him became interested in writing literature for children. More than 1,000 children's stories appeared in AZN Ajasagam 1905 to 1922. Became chief editor of Zsigmond Napló in 1913 and director of Szamajai Könyvtár and Zsigmond Városi Museum in 1917. Member of Petofi Társaság in 1915. Also member of Kisfaludy Társaság and Dugonix Társaság. Supported revolutionary government 1918 to 1919. Member of Nemzeti Tanács. Forced to leave Zsigmond Napló on May 8, 1919, was placed on blacklist, expected imprisonment but was not arrested. Continued to publish own works. Contributed to Világ 1922 to 1926 and then to Magyar Hírlap. Despite heavy journalistic, library and museum work, excavations and societal responsibilities, his writing career reached high point at end of 1920s. Named honorary citizen of Zsigmond in 1929. Awarded honorary doctorate by University of Zsigmond in 1932. Died of cancer. Began as poet but became important to the development of Hungarian literature through novels, short stories, sketches, and newspaper reports. Novels and short stories blend romanticism and realism successfully. Subject matter frequently that of peasant life in area of Zsigmond. Strong ethical outlook. Effective in use of humor. Writings for children considered to be classics in Hungarian literature. Also wrote natural science textbooks and edited Igiatimi Nyomda series for children, to which he also contributed readings in natural history in story form. Daru Utkatol Amora Ferenkutkaig has been translated into Dutch, Araneko Porso into Dutch, German, and Slovakian, Xilixilik Salavari Xalavar into Romanian, Diobal Kirillify into German, Enika Buzamizo Kroll into Czech, Danish, Dutch, English, Finnish, German, Swedish, and Turkish, Hannibal Foltamaz Tasa into Czech, Kinkskarezo Kiskadman into German and Slovakian, and some of his short stories into Bulgarian, Czech, French, German, Italian, Polish, Serbian. Moricz Zsigmond. Born July 2, 1879 in Tazaxix, died September 4, 1942 in Budapest. Novelist, short story writer, dramatist, publicist, critic. Father a peasant. Studied at Debreceni Reformatus Collegium, 1891-1893, Saraspataka Collegium, 1894-1896, and school in Kisuj Zalas, 1896-1898. Entered Debreceni Reformatus Collegium in 1899 to study theology but transferred to law after 6 months. His first work, Abexi Buter, appeared at this time, and he worked for Debreceni Eliner and Debreceni Hurlap. Went to Budapest in fall 1900, studied law for a time, and then pursued philosophy, theology, linguistics, and literary history at University of Budapest. Plans for literary career kept him from completing studies leading to teaching career. Worked in Ministry of Culture and then Office of Statistics. Several of his articles on literary subjects appeared in Urania in 1902. Became editorial staff member of AZ Ujsag in fall of 1903, with which he remained until 1909. Married Eugenia Holix in 1905. Wide recognition came in 1908 on publication of Het Krajkar in Nyugat. During 1903 to 1908 he frequently toured villages to collect folk songs and tales, though he never published any of them. Began close relationship with Endre Audi, QV, in 1909, considered him a major influence on his life and writings. Member of Patofi Tarsasig in 1912. Generally viewed as a distinguished writer of prose by 1919. During 1918 to 1919 he helped to revive Patofi Tarsasig, served as vice president of Vörösmarty Academy, as an editor of Mplap and as senior member of Világszabad Szag, and contributed to Pesti Futur, Vörös Lobago, Faklaya, and Samajai Vörös Ujsag. Member of Kisfaludy Tarsasig in 1919. After failure of revolutionary government, he was barred from Kisfaludy Tarsasig and Patofi Tarsasig. Plays were not performed in National Theatre until 1928, writings appeared only in Nyugat and AZ Est publications. After suicide of first wife he married Maria Simonyi in 1926. Became editor of prose section of Nyugat at end of 1929. Named honorary citizen of hometown in same year. Resigned editorship of Nyugat at beginning of 1933. Assumed editorship of Kalatnip in December 1939 to provide publication opportunities for populist writers. Divorced second wife in 1939 and lived in Linifalu, from where he commuted to Budapest. Isolation increased and he turned attention almost exclusively to writing. Funeral attended only by handful of mourners. Most important realistic writer of his generation, presented condition of Hungarian peasants for first time in full detail. Wrote plays but novels and short stories are most important writings. Dealt acutely with ugliness and poverty of peasant life but often treated lighter aspect of Hungarian scene with genuine humor. Publicist writings and literary criticism vital to understanding of period. Many of his novels have been translated into Bulgarian, Chinese, Croatian, Czech, English, Estonian, Finnish, French, German, Italian, Lithuanian, Polish, Romanian, Russian, Slovakian, Slovenian, Turkish, and Ukrainian. Editions of his short stories are available in Bulgarian, Czech, Estonian, Finnish, German, Hindi, Lithuanian, Persian, Romanian, Russian, Slovakian, Swedish, and Ukrainian, and an edition of his plays in Russian.